Good morning, good evening, good morning. I'm Saint Envious, and I'm here to help you tackle your top 5 biggest art fears. So we'll work through some of these together, I'll give you some tips and tricks, and by the end of it, you should be able to tackle these pretty handedly. The number one fear I hear from seasoned artists and new artists is the blank canvas problem. That you just have a big, white, empty void, and you don't know what to do with the void. Here are 4 methods that I use personally to actually get over this. First one, change the color of your canvas. You might see in art stores sketchbooks with papers in all different colors, not just the regular white. I prefer the tan color, that's why everything I do, you'll always see the tan background instead of the white background. It's a little easier on the eyes, especially if you're working digitally. So here's a couple different colors that I have seen other people use, like a dark gray, a dark blue gray. I use the tan, like I said. You can also change the color of the pencil you're drawing with. That helps too sometimes. I use a really dark brown, some people use like a dark red. It's just the white and the black, just like that really binary look that really turns people off. The other problem you might be facing is that your canvas is too big. I actually have tricks for dealing with this digitally and in person. So if you're working traditionally, literally, you can just grab the sheet of paper you're working on and you can tear it. It's for a sketch anyway, or it's just for the piece. You can make it work. You can just work with a smaller sheet of paper. You don't have to worry about messing it up because you have more paper. There's always going to be more paper. It's okay to mess it up. But if you're working digitally, it's not as fluid, or at least not usually. The way I do it, however, is I make my canvas obscenely tiny. You'll always see me start off with like a 200 pixel by 200 pixel canvas instead of like right from the get-go on HD dimensions. It just helps my brain really not worry about everything looking pretty, because when you're drawing at this size, everything's going to be pixelated and everything's going to look shitty anyway. So you can just roll on forward being like, yeah, it's a sketch, it's not supposed to look good anyway. And later on, you can increase the resolution, so it's totally fine to start off with this way and upgrade the piece later on to the dimensions you actually want to see it at. My third tip for this one is just draw dumb shit. Stupid little sketches, who the hell cares? Nobody has to see this if you don't want them to. And if the point is just to get something on the canvas, just so you have something to start from, you can just do little dumb sketches for yourself. Yep, look at it go. Look at those dumb sketches. What the hell did I even draw? I drew this weeks ago. What the hell? Yeah, alright, go off, whatever, past me. Let's just go on to the 4th and final tip for dealing with a blank canvas. This one's more of an art exercise, and that is, don't lift the pen. Keep whatever utensil you are using to draw with, and just don't lift it off the pen. Getting it on it is half the battle in the first place. You don't have to keep fighting that fight over and over again. Just keep the pencil on the page, and just let your hand go. Just see what comes out. You are going to come out with something really random that you might not have even been intending to draw in the first place. I had no idea I was going to be drawing a graveyard, but this is just what came out because I just left the pen on the canvas and I just let it go. So there's 4 tips to just getting started on art. The next biggest fear, and you've probably heard this one before, is hands. But here are 6 tips for helping you deal with hands. The first one I have for you is just stare at hands until they stop becoming even like a thing to you conceptually. And there's plenty of places where you can stare at hands. You can stare at hands on Pinterest. You can stare at hands on Google. You can go out in public. But if you go out in public, just don't tell them that Goat from YouTube told you to do it, because that might be need explaining. But you can also just stare at your own hands if that makes you feel better, which actually leads me into my second tip for this one, is to feel the pose in your own hand. If you have a character and you know exactly what kind of hands you want them to have for like this scene or this pose, do the pose yourself with whichever hand you need to do it with. And if you feel the pose, like you can actually sit down and focus on how the muscles are moving and how the bones in your hands are moving, it'll help you contextualize what's happening in the actual drawing, like what the hand you're drawing is doing physically. Having that really solid concept of what is happening in reality can make it easier to translate something into like a 2D space. And plus, if you use your own hand, you can get as many reference pictures as you want and not have to explain yourself, which is nice. Now for actually drawing the hands. I have 3 basic methods here that I'm going to show you. The first one is the block method, which you've probably seen. Just draw a bunch of squares, see what comes out. I have a couple examples right here where you can see I'm blocking out the hand first, and then that's when you go back in with the sketch and you make it look all pretty and dainty, or whatever you need the hand to do. If it's like a fist, it's probably not that dainty, but who knows. The next method is the stick method. Sticks are a really easy way to make your hands look very fluid. So if a lot of your characters tend to follow that like graceful, elegant kind of archetype, sticks are probably going to be more useful for you. But I've used both blocks and sticks, don't get me wrong. They're both useful for different vibes. The last method that I've seen, but I don't use that often personally, is the shape method, where you draw your shape first, and then you go back in and you figure out where the lines need to go inside of the shape. Which is actually where this final tip is going to come in handy for you. And that is to simplify. Because you know what a hand can also be? A hand can just be some circles. A hand can just be a little oval with some extra oval buddies on it. Hands can be very versatile. It really also just depends on your style, what kind of mood you're going for, because a really hyper-realistic extra hand has a very different vibe from, like, you know, these Adventure Time-esque little nubbins. Both cute, both have their place, but it is okay if you just want to stick with one and focus on, like, the feelings and the vibes that those hands give you. You can still get a lot of emotion and, character out of the simplified hands. And it's still a hand. It's valid. Don't worry about it. So now that we've gone over hands, now that we've gone over the canvas, we can actually focus on drawing a person. We're going to focus on 2 different body types here, the first of which I'm more familiar with, and that is the femme body type. My biggest advice for you when drawing the feminine shapes is to really focus on the smoothness and the elegance. The femme body types more lead into one another very smoothly. I like to think of it like a waterfall. When you're drawing a femme body, whether that is for a trans woman or AFAB or anything in between, or anything outside of that, think of a physical descriptor that you really want to latch onto and make that the focus. So in this one on the left, the idea was really for the like haughty elegance. So she has very poised and put together, and she's very pointed, but everything's still very smooth. There's a lot of emphasis on the curves and that flowing quality. On the right here, I just really wanted someone to be like cute and round and soft. So I again went with more of a softer body type. She's got a bit more meat on her bones. She's real cute. But so both of these women here, you can see, have that flowing quality to them. There's a lot of curves involved. Really, if you want to get good at drawing femme body types, practice circles. Circles and ovals are going to be your best friends. Femme body types, circles. And now we'll move on to the masc body types. So masc body types. I actually don't have as much advice for you here as I do for femme body types. I'm still getting used to it. So there's a little piece of advice in there too, is that you're still going to be learning all the time, even if you've been drawing for 20 plus years like I have. But my biggest reference for you for masc body types, where we focused on circles and ovals, for femmes, masc body types, boxes. You want to box it out, really get those strong, solid shapes in there. References are probably going to be your best bet. Like if you know that there is a artist that you like who does men really well, or if there's a piece of media that you really like the men thereof, it is totally cool to go in and find a reference and just try to draw from what you see. Don't draw over it. Don't trace. Not because that's bad etiquette or whatever, but because you're not going to learn as much as you will from trying to replicate what you're seeing by hand as opposed to just over what you're actually doing. Focus on the boxes and really straight lines. Even if your character is super gay, like my boy here, Callan, from my webcomic. Gayest man ever. Straight lines all anywhere that I can possibly put them. For our final subject for today, the final most common fear of artists, beginner or practiced. Perspective. Just do your best. No, okay, I'm kidding. I do have one tip for you, but it's kind of particular to have if you have this specific program that I use, Clipsidio. If you take your front-on character, same pose that you want to do for your perspective drawing, get like a ladder going, draw a ladder out, duplicate that layer, put it off to the side, start adjusting it with the transformation tool, right click to change it to perspective, and then you can figure out how extreme you want that angle to be. Put it over to the side, and you can see how everything lines up the same way. The eyes hit that first rung of that ladder, the hands hit that second rung, and so on and so forth. If you follow the ladder and really understand the three-dimensionality of what you're trying to draw, perspective is going to be a lot easier. As well as, being able to transform things after the fact is also very useful. If you're drawing traditionally, you could try the same ladder method. Do your best. Honestly, perspective's hard. So that was Saint Envious' tips for tackling your 5 biggest art fears. Feel free to come back to this anytime you need to reference it. If you want to ask more questions, or if you want to get other suggestions for future topics that I cover, feel free to leave a comment, and I will try to either answer them in a question or make a video in the future, which would be a good reason for you to possibly like and subscribe to the video, especially if you found any of these tips useful. Really hope you enjoyed the video. It was a lot of fun to make. I plan on making more of these in the future, as well as just drawing challenges. If you ever want to catch me drawing live and you want to chat with me, I do stream on Twitch Monday and Wednesday mornings at like 3 a.m. Don't ask me about my sleep schedule. You all have a good morning, good evening, good morning. I'll see you next time.